get started. First, thank you all for coming tonight. It's an important topic, obviously, to these ladies, but it really shows your commitment to the community as a whole. Before we get started, a couple housekeeping items. One, bathrooms are towards the back, so if you haven't found those and it's your first time here, go through the lobby, left and right. From there, there's an emergency, find the closest exit, or listen to whoever's on duty, which would be those guys in the back, and they'll direct you as to where to go. You guys probably are pretty familiar with it. And then tonight's presentation is going to be recorded, so keep that in mind with appropriate questions and so forth, and we'll go from there. With that, we're excited to welcome Kayla Musselman. Right here. She holds a bachelor's degree in social work from the University of Akron. Kayla has been with Hattie Larum for almost 2 years, where she works closely with adults with with a variety of disabilities. Her passion for this work is deeply personal. Herself has a learning disability, which drove her to that course of work. Kayla represents Hattie Larum. If you're not familiar with Hattie Larum, it is a nonprofit organization committed to providing care and enriching opportunities for children and adults with intellectual and developmental needs and disabilities. One of their standout programs is Excel. This is a daytime initiative that focuses on exploration, connection, engagement, and learning. Hattie Larum's mission center is the well-being of the success of the individuals that they serve. Also joining us tonight is Tisha Eisenhuth. She is the parent mentor for Twinsburg City School District. Tisha holds a master's degree in special education and collaborates closely with the families throughout the special education process. She serves as a vital resource for both parents and staff, ensuring that everyone involved has the tools, support, and guidance needed for their student to be successful. And I will also let Tisha take it from here and tell you her special niche as to why this is so appropriate for her to give something like this.
I'm in the vicinity of the mic here. Well, I appreciate your interest in this topic tonight. It's close to my heart, and it's something I think will be helpful to the community as well. So when I put this slide together, so I might as well tell you a little bit about me. Resident of Twinsburg. That's my family there in the middle. That's my husband Joe in the back and my son Zachary in the center. That is at the New River Gorge National Park this summer in July, and we did the bridge walk. We were with extended family, and we're the only ones that were willing to do the bridge walk, the highest bridge in North America there. So yeah, that was pretty exciting. And then, you mentioned master degree. I got passionate enough about my work through the school district that I pursued a master's degree in special ed. But what I do by day is I'm an Ohio parent mentor, and we are trained, and our salaries are covered by the Ohio Department of Education and Workforce. So it's just a nice program. There's over 90 of us throughout the state covering different school districts, and we support those families who have students with disabilities through a lot of the processes that can be overwhelming, IEPs, 504s, things like that. So I did my master's degree focusing on autism and related disabilities. And then the picture on the right is my husband, Joe, with a much younger Zach there. And he is the lieutenant in charge of Fire Prevention Bureau at Solon. So he also spent a lot of years before that as a firefighter paramedic on shift responding to calls as well. So just with that, that experience as a professional, as a wife, and then our son Zach is on the autism spectrum. So that just kind of gives that mom and parent perspective on navigating things through school and in the community as well. So I'm happy to be here to kind of share some information with you about autism tonight. Anything else you got?
As you said, I'm Kayla. I work with Hattie Larum. So we work with participants from Outlet High School on. Our oldest is like 70, in their 70s. So we have different disabilities, one's in wheelchairs, autism, etc. So what we do, we try to go in the community and help them be go on trips, like go in the movies, go into bowling alleys, different environments, and help them be socially interactive with others. So that's a little bit more about how to learn alone. Yes, I have a learning disability and speech impediment, so working with this population, definitely passionate about it. So, yeah.
Okay, so I just thought, give you an idea what to expect, kind of talk a little bit about, what is autism, if you're not too familiar, some of the facts, how the medical world defines autism, some of the major characteristics that you might notice, and then just touch on the treatment a little bit, and then just kind of dive into those challenges that can present, things you might notice that involve like those emotional aspects, sensory aspects. And then I kind of put together some hypothetical scenarios for first responders. I kind of threw some of my suggestions and some things that I've researched in there, but I'd really like to, hear you guys shout out some things at that time if you're comfortable too, like ideas that you might have. And then I have a few resources at the end that might be helpful if you want to learn more about some of these topics, like after tonight, things you want to look up online, or some tools that you might want to consider, if you want to put in some of your response vehicles or something that might be helpful when you're out in the community. Okay, so what is autism spectrum disorder? So the autism spectrum disorder is a neurological and developmental disorder that affects how people, and I put these in red because these are just the main components to remember, interact with others, communicate, learn, and behave. Although it can be diagnosed at any age, it's described as a developmental disorder because generally it is diagnosed, you see those symptoms within the first 2 years of life. You could go, okay. I like this. This is an author I like, Ellen Notbohm. She said, the child with autism is like a Mac in a PC world. He's hardwired differently, not incorrectly, just differently. So teach him in a manner meaningful to him. So when you understand a little bit more about that hardwiring, just how the brain may process that incoming information differently, it gives you that opportunity to just have stronger interactions and maybe understand somebody that you meet that has autism. It gives you more tools that you can be understanding and empathetic. So I put some facts up here, a little bit of research. ASD includes many individuals with average or above average intelligence, while others might have more intensive cognitive challenges. So 25 to 30% are considered nonverbal, and keep in mind, being nonverbal is not necessarily an indicator of somebody's intelligence or their abilities. 50 to 70% could also have ADHD besides having autism. 40% could have an anxiety disorder. So there could be 2-3 diagnoses, sometimes total, that could kind of coincide. It's not uncommon. This just changed 2025 at the CDC. 1 in 31 people have autism. There's some controversy in the news about, what's causing it? We got to get to the bottom of it. There's always talk about it. But if you think about over time, I know when I was in elementary school, you didn't hear people talk about autism too much. In my elementary, other kids didn't seem to know what autism was or what that diagnosis was. So over time, not only the public awareness has increased, to where parents are looking for possible indicators, but the medical field has gained more knowledge as well. So now, saying we have 1 in 31 people, we've broadened that umbrella. We don't have a separate category for Asperger's or for PDD-NOS or childhood disintegrative disorder. It's all autism now. So you got the broad spectrum from one end to the other, and all these things are included in it. So that is going to change your numbers when you see it. And then I just put chances are you probably have already know now, or you've met someone with autism even if you didn't realize it. So good. All right, so I just threw up for the sake of recognizing how the medical field looks at it, and then if a parent goes to the doctor with their child and their child gets a diagnosis of autism, they typically are going to put it into 3 categories. So this is level 1, which is considered more mild. So individuals might have difficulty with social communication and interaction. So like sometimes you might see, social norms aren't recognized as easy, or, don't understand expressions we use. Sometimes speaking might come out more bluntly without thinking through the answer. It might sound very blunt. May exhibit repetitive behaviors or restrictive interests. So I don't know, one I thought of was, maybe an 8-year-old has a really big interest in trains, and all they like to talk about is trains, and they would know the model of all the trains and all the tracks that run through the neighboring towns and where they go about trains, and watching documentaries of trains, and like sometimes just like hard to like deviate that interest into other areas. And then you may see some repetitive behaviors in mild, typically require some support in daily life with social skills or academic tasks. So, some instruction on social skills with peers, interacting with adults, academic tasks that have a lot of abstract thinking, geometry, math concepts like that can be tricky, or organizational skills, organizing assignments, breaking tasks down to manage them into smaller chunks is helpful. They might struggle with creative writing more, like those abstract kind of thinking. Okay, let me go. So level 2, I put for moderate. You're going to see it kind of just goes up more significant difficulties with that social communication and interaction. You might see, even more repetitive behaviors that are a little more pronounced. I mean, if you think about it, we all do some sort of repetitive behavior sometimes. Maybe you get a little nervous or bored at your desk and you're tapping your pen, or you're tapping your foot. You just might see it more pronounced with somebody with autism. I know my son likes to hold one of those stretchy strings or something in his hand, and it's just a good way he kind of self-regulates how he feels. He just likes to have his hand moving. You might see some kids with it even bigger. You might see 2 hands. You might see a lot of energy where you're jumping up and down and you got to move around the room a lot. You might see rocking back and forth. Some of those kind of things might be more pronounced. That communication can be tricky with back and forth, staying on topic. You might need some, learning skills at school or through speech therapy on conversating with others in the give and take, going back and forth. Then requiring substantial support in multiple areas of life, including communication, social skills, and daily routines. So often need a lot of prompts, like through activities of the day or reminders, or putting things on a written schedule, and having those visual supports is helpful. They might even have some fine motor challenges where like they have trouble cutting food and need some support, or even brushing teeth and getting all those different angles, might need some support until those skills are developed more.
At Hattie Larlam, like I said, we have a day program, and one of our members, he has autism. He has a routine every day, and he's very sensitive with loud noises. So his routine is like eat his lunch when he gets in and hit all the bathrooms, and he has a routine. And if we have a member who presents very vocally, he gets overwhelmed, he does his flappy arms, and he'll go to the center room and calm themselves down. So it happens. Little noises might ruin their day and express themselves differently. And we also prompt them in different activities, like, hey, can you cut this up? And he cuts it up perfectly. Or, hey, can you color this? So with our members, it's step by step, and you have to help them. Mm-hmm. So everyone's different. So that's one of our members on this day-to-day basis. So.
And then I just put level 3, and that's just the more intensive side. So you're going to think, you might be more likely to see somebody needing to point at visuals to communicate, or they might have an iPad, they might have a talker to help get those wants and needs out there, or be able to have a conversation. They might need that support. Repetitive behaviors and restricted interests will be more pronounced. An example I could think of is, maybe if a mom has an appointment scheduled for her daughter, but her daughter likes to play with a certain toy at a certain time of day in a certain room, and then the appointment's going to interfere with that. So maybe if mom tries to tries to get her daughter to the car at that time, but she's so set in that routine, like you mentioned how important those routines can be, maybe then we have, crying, or we have anger, or we have something, because not understanding why I need to be pulled out of that routine can be hard. And then I put, requires substantial support in all areas of life. So that would just need more adult interaction for communicating the hygiene, like the daily activities throughout the day. It needs more direct support. Oh, and I should mention too, like you said, everybody's different. Somebody doesn't necessarily fit in one of these, like a neat box. So you might be like mild to moderate or moderate to intensive and have some characteristics that overlap. It's just for the sake, I guess, of the medical field and, giving people kind of an idea of where they are on that spectrum. That's why they have the levels, I guess. It'll probably change in 5 years, like they seem to change things a lot. And then I just wanted to touch a slide on treatment. So there's no known cure for autism, but individuals can make great gains through therapy. So some of those you see is speech, occupational therapy, physical therapy, and ABA therapy. And I put have a growth mindset because they do say the greatest gains are made in the early intervention and the preschool years, but really, you can see individuals can make progress and learn all throughout their life just as anybody else can. So it's always important to have that growth mindset that everybody can always learn new skills and they can always make progress. And then I put medications. Those, I'm sure there's more that some people, find helpful. A lot of the common ones are for ADHD to help with attention, or OCD to help with some of that compulsive type behavior. Tend to help sometimes, depending on the individual. And then, a lot of what the work that I do as a parent mentor involves that school specialized instruction or accommodation plan. So a lot of kids with ASD have an IEP or a 504 plan. So an IEP is those special education services, and then a 504 is more of just accommodations that help them access the environment. And then research does support inclusion with same age peers. So you'll probably, I'm sure you could mention how everybody's different. Some kids are very interested in playing with other kids and other peers if they're on the autism spectrum. Others may look like that's more overwhelming and they're a little more withdrawn looking and maybe not as interested, but there's a lot of research that supports that inclusion helps in many ways, not only to make progress academically, but just, who doesn't want to feel like they belong, or who doesn't want to feel like they're cared about and part of something bigger than themselves. So
yeah, with our one member who has autism, he does really well with the other participants. We have sensory rooms. Once it gets too loud for him, he goes to a sensory room. But like I said earlier, we're going on trips, and every time we go ask him, he said, yes, let's go. So he's very open and ready to go and eager to go in the community. And we make sure we go on safety protocols every time we go on trips, like what's my name, what's our company name, who's the manager, and he's verbal. He knows who to contact and what. Twinsburg Excel, so he's very interactive with other participants, which is awesome. So.
So then I just put up here for emotions. So all of us have emotions, obviously. All of us can experience that fight, flight, or freeze response. So, if you think you're in your house and you're walking at night and you haven't turned the light on in the kitchen, and all of a sudden out back you hear a large bang. I mean, you're obviously going to freeze. You might have a feeling in the pit of your stomach of butterflies. Your heart might start racing. So you know what that feels like. Same thing for individuals with autism, that those feelings may be much more intense than even like what we experience it, and they may be presented differently, and they may happen for something that seems more minimal to us than what it does for them.
The big thing is to just be patient with them. Like she said, might be smaller for us, but bigger for them. Just be patient with them, and when they're acting overload. Mm-hmm. So just be patient with them.
I'm glad you said overload, because there it is. So sensory overload. Individuals with autism have senses like everyone else, but those senses could be ultra heightened. Too much information can flood in. So the ability to process a lot of simultaneous input depends on the person. So if you think of our five senses, you know, if something that I see and hear at the same time comes in, my brain's kind of putting those into categories and processing what's going on. And it happens rather quickly, but somebody on the spectrum may not have the ability, and their brain may not be able to categorize that in the same way. So it's just flooding in and bombarding. So kind of think of it that way. So you might have that, you know, it could be one sense that's very strong, or they could be getting hit with 3, 4, or 5 senses all at once, and it's all coming in. And that can lead to, you know, if somebody tries to touch them when it's that point, they may jump or have a large reaction. They might have a big response to sudden loud noises. You might see them jump or yell, or you know, getting fearful, looking more fearful around too many you know, being in a crowded room. And then, you know, maybe not quite as often, but somebody can have poor balance when they're overwhelmed sensory, might fall more or be fearful of climbing or falling. So on that kind of same idea of being overstimulated, I like this diagram because it kind of, just starting from the top left there, you know, things that you might see that need to escape. So somebody could run away or run off just to try to escape whatever is going on that's overwhelming. Might not be able to speak. So even if they are verbal, they might just, at that time, not have the ability to convey what's bothering them. Increased stimming, so you may see that rocking intensify, or even spinning sometimes, or a lot of flapping body movement. Feeling uncomfortable, sometimes it's more subtle, even like just looking down, looking nervous, looking around. The covering eyes or ears is pretty common. I think if there's a lot of you know, just trying to kind of just put a stop to that overload for a minute. You know, stop what you're seeing, stop what you're hearing. Difficulty processing information, so it's going to be harder, obviously, with all that coming in. And the emotional reactions, you might see anger, you might see fear, you might see crying. Like, it depends on the person. Irritability, then I'm on the right side. Senses are intensified. Head might feel fuzzy, so a little bit of confusion could be evident. Difficulty focusing, looking very distracted, and then feeling overloaded, and then repetitive vocalization. So that could be like a sentence or a few words that is repeated over and over and over, or it could just be sounds that are repeated over and over. And you probably, I've seen that in your work too, just like you said, if you have some.
Yeah, his movements are this, and the orb covers his ears.
Yeah.
Goes to the sensory room, and he sensitizes there. So.
And then, so that's what it could look like. We talked a little bit about that. I thought those were good pictures, depending, you know, could be in various ages. You know, it's not just defined to somebody that's young. And then it could also be under-responsive. So sometimes you might encounter somebody slower to speak. It might take longer to process the directions you're giving them, or if you ask them a question, you might not get an answer right away. But if you give it 5 or 6 seconds, then you might, if you just give that a chance to them to process that info. Slower movements could be apparent or appearing sluggish. So somebody might just sit down on the ground and then they're not getting up, like just total shutdown. All right, so this is a video. I thought that would give you guys a kind of good idea what it might feel like to feel sensory overload. that video, the lady responded nicely when that happened, whereas, you know, in a scenario, hey kid, what you doing? You just knocked this over, you know. So like it's always, you know, nice when you see that if something like that happens, that person realizes that something's going on here, or this person's overwhelmed. Okay, so here getting into kind of like if you come upon an emergency, these are some things that I put down initially. What could you do at the scene? So if you kind of suspect somebody might have some of these challenges, reduce the sirens and the flashing lights if you can. Give some space upon arrival. And I put if possible because I understand if somebody is bleeding profusely, you can't give them space. Like I get that. Remove sunglasses. I always like this saying, the eyes are the window to the soul. So, you know, don't make half your face a mystery for somebody. That's a good way to help establish trust. Avoid loud, quick reactions, even positive ones. So, you know, even if somebody thinks that they're, you know, approaching a kiddo and you're, hey, how's it doing? You know, how you doing there? You know what I mean? You might be thinking you're just being positive and nice, but you may alarm them. And then introduce yourself by name and state your role. So in this case, you know, my name's Dave. I'm an emergency responder here to help you. So just calm, you know, kind, you know, even probably the best way to approach it. All right, I put pause after directions or questions using clear, simple statements and allow time to process. So just giving it a little time to see if you get an answer before kind of peppering over and over a question or giving a direction. Front loading information calmly. Like, so if you're doing like blood pressure or something like that, you know, now I'm going to put this on your arm. It doesn't really hurt. It feels like giving your arm a hug. Granted, that'd be age appropriate. I wouldn't expect to say that to an adult, maybe in the same way, you know, but if it's a young child. I always put, you know, speak age appropriate, talk with, not down. You're going to talk differently depending on someone's age. Provide sensory tools if possible. I have some slides later on that to give some ideas on that. And then establish trust and be patient. All right, so I just kind of threw out some scenarios. I thought maybe you guys might have some ideas before I click in some of the ones I thought of. So, you know, you have somebody that maybe got overwhelmed and their mom called 911, said they ran off into the woods. And then everybody goes searching and you find them. What could you do? What's one of the first things you could do? Anybody want to throw an idea out there? Yeah.
Sit down and get down to there and know, like.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I don't even think I put that one on there. That's a great idea.
Introduce yourself.
Yes, introduce yourself.
It might be helpful if you could repeat the question so that the video will pick it up.
Oh, didn't it pick it up?
Yeah, no, just.
Yeah, oh, right. You find a child, yeah, you find a child with autism who's lost in the woods. Any others anybody wants to throw out?
Talk quietly with them.
Yeah, talk quietly, you know, don't come on too strong.
Call them by name.
Yeah, exactly. If you know their name, yeah, you should, I mean, if mom called 911, or you should know their name, yep.
Single voice.
Yes, sounds good. Any others? Okay, so here's the ones I threw up. They project calm, same thing like speak more quietly or calmly. Have a go-to person to establish trust. So like thinking maybe like when you finally see them, like 5 people don't run up and surround them, you know, and say, don't go anywhere, we found you. You know what I mean? So like just kind of try to have that go-to person that they can talk to. Like you said, that'd be a great, you know, if you kind of sat down in their lower or something, if it's a younger child. Provide or let them come to you willingly. So, you know, if you can, like, you know, see if they'll kind of come over and talk to you without you going too fast towards them. Because they're already probably in panic mode a little bit, you know, so you don't want to make it worse in some ways. Provide a distraction. So I like this one, you know, like sometimes someone might be really interested in like a radio or a flashlight. So you say, hey, you want to hold your own radio or you want to hold your own flashlight and you can walk with me and I'll give you your own flashlight. You know, let's go see mom. You can, you know, let's find our way out of here. Pause after questions. Like I said, that processing time before. Use an area of interest. So like if it was a kid and, you see they have a shirt on with a train, you might say, I see you have a train on your shirt. Let's go see mom, and then I'll show you some of the pictures of trains on my phone. Maybe you can look up some pictures or offer to look up some pictures. It might just be a way to just get that conversation going and establish trust like that.
Question, what if they're a runner?
Yeah, that's trickier. I'd say the calling by name. But I mean, yeah, that's like one of those things. It's hard to say don't chase someone because you don't want to lose them again. So.
One of our trainings for search and rescue, we had a point that was brought up that if you talk to the parents and find something that they like, you said trainings.
Yeah.
So what they said was sometimes calling by name, I mean, just think as a kid when you're called by name and shouting, you're not like, oh man, this is going to be really good. So when shouting your name, it's like you're in trouble.
Yeah.
So in the example they gave, they said the search party walked by the kid multiple times because they were shouting his name, and then the kid thought he was in trouble. Well, the guy that did the training got on the scene and he's like, what does the kid like? And he liked chocolate. So the example was, he's like, hey, we got a like chocolate ice cream or something they gave or whatever, and the kid popped right up as they were walking through doing a search. So if you can find something the kid likes, and like I said, the shouting of the kid's name could make the kid think he's in trouble, and you're just shouting his name and you're faith thinking like, hey, I'm over here, we're gonna look for you, but that kid may not know he thinks he's in trouble, so it's something else to think about too.
Yeah, especially if they're already running, you might think, yeah, I'm
Right.
definitely in trouble now,
Sure.
Yeah, so maybe even yelling it out, let's go get some chocolate or, yeah,
Right.
something like that. Any other? Okay, so that was the first one I had. I would have made one, I didn't know, like, you guys were all coming, I would have made like a ranger one too.
Oh, yeah.
But I just kind of went with what I had. So didn't want to be remiss not mentioning water. So the chances of go way up. Not all individuals with autism are drawn to going to water, but it is more prevalent with autism as a sensory experience. So it shimmers, it bubbles, it feels good to get in the water, and sometimes kids are drawn naturally to go to the water. So like, I think some of these stats were more out of Florida, but out of the over 21,000 unintentional drowning or ER related visits, 369 of those involved children with ASD. So it doubled the odds if they were on the spectrum. So those drownings are more likely to occur at pools, natural bodies of water, or bathtubs, and higher hospital rates. I can even think that, like, my son's in high school now, and he's pretty typical as far as he did swim lessons. Like, he's interested sometimes in swimming on vacation, not real drawn to water now. But when he was young, we were up at Conneaut Lake, and there was one of those like creek, like, I don't know, like a tributary that goes into the lake, like drains into the lake. And the water level wasn't too high, thank goodness, but I remember we were just walking along at a fairly steep bank, and then just all of a sudden, he just went right down and just jumped 2 feet first right into the water. And my husband and I are like, whoa, like, we just never seen that behavior before, ever. Like, I think we'd been swimming and he'd been around water, but never, like, we'd been hiking, we'd been, never saw it quite like that. So luckily, I mean, the water was only like up to here, and we just went down but we were like, oh gosh, we gotta be careful of that, because we had no idea that all of a sudden you might just veer off and want to go jump in the water. So he outgrew that. Some people don't, just depending on the person. Like, if they have that interest in going to water, they may not think it's dangerous or may not realize it's deep or something like that.
Talking about that, if you see he's going to harm himself, either being close to a pool or close to a creek bed where he could fall, what do you do? Should you grab him and get him to safety? I mean, and hope for the best out of that? I mean, even if he's going to fight and scream?
I think if you're able to get between him and the water first, that would be the best scenario. You know what I mean? Like, without putting the hands on. But if you have to put the hands on, you have to put the hands on. Like you said, if somebody's in dire danger. But like, I think in my mind, the best thing would be to not instantly lay the hands and try to get in
Put your
between.
body in front
Yeah.
of it. So.
So here's the second one I thought might be interesting. So like, go on an EMS call. This is maybe somebody a little older, like a teenager. And we're assuming in all of these that you know they have autism, like maybe the parent or whoever, a friend that called for help has said to you, hey, you know, they have autism, so just so you're aware. So they're having an asthma attack. Any ideas, like so you just think a little bit more age appropriate, like in this too. You may not say the same thing that you would to somebody young.
Still think identifying yourself as
Who you are.
who you are.
Yeah.
First thing to start off.
Definitely. I think that's always important. Like you just see like, you know, especially if somebody's like that, they may already feel kind of panicky and you don't want them to panic more. So as much as you can do to make them feel comfortable with why you're coming in the room now and what you're gonna do.
They may be used to it, you don't know, and just gather information from them how they may deal with this problem.
Yes.
They may recognize what they have to do.
What they have to do.
If you give them the control.
Yep. Anything else?
Talking to caregivers.
Yeah, any insight into what they are? Yeah, so there's the introduce yourself and role. This is not one of those calls where you try to hurry the person. Hey, let's just go walk out to the squad and let's get, you know, this is like one of those ones, maybe take a second here. Say it and show it, I think is always a good phrase. Explain the equipment you're gonna use, you know, hey, I'd like to, you know, listen to your heart, you know, this and that. Give choices, so kind of what Dan was saying, I know who Dan is, so I plugged in. What he was saying, you know, kind of bring them into it. So if you can give them a choice to kind of make them work with you, you know, hey, why don't we sit down? Does that help if you sit down? Where do you want to sit? Do you want to sit in this chair? Do you want to sit on the couch? You know, empowering them to work with you there. Anything else? Yeah.
So on that though, the filtering, on a normal person, sometimes it's hard to get them to, when you feel like you're suffocating, whether they want to mask on hand. How is that related to autism?
I think, like, you mean if you have to put the oxygen mask
I
on,
mean,
like,
if that's the best course of action to get
Yeah.
the nebulizer going or whatever.
yeah.
Like, is there a better way to explain it to them?
I think the say it, show it. I mean, obviously you can't put it all the way on yourself, but saying, you know, hey, this is going to help you breathe a bit better. You know, I'm gonna put it on you. It's gonna go like, you know, and kind of model it without you, you know, having to use on, you know, say I'm gonna put this on and it's gonna help you, or do you want to help hold it as I put it on, or something like that, like help them.
Yeah, step by step is very important, so.
Do you think they would have the aerosol or not with them? You know, their own medicine?
Yeah, I think it depends on the person. I mean, yeah, a teenager may be capable of having that with them, especially if they're kind of more in that mild to moderate range in autism, like they might be able
So
to.
you would ask them?
Yeah, do you have, that's a great question, yeah. Do you have your own medication that you? And like sometimes sometimes a family member might be around that gives you information, but like sometimes if they're at school, they might be scrambling to look up the database or something, and you know, you might not have it right on hand too. You guys got some tough questions. Yeah. Let's see, so I did that. So here, this is the one I could think of for fire. So there's a car accident, you have to extricate somebody, and you know that the boy in the backseat has autism. What's something that might help? Something that might help as you kind of approach that scene. And they're gonna have to use the jaws of life.
If you can somehow apply a distraction would be a big help, especially if you're at the big, jaws of life is not a small tool, it is very intimidating coming at you if you're sitting in the bad seat,
Yeah.
you know? Somehow, yeah.
Fear protection.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a good idea. Like even somebody could maybe go around to their side and talk to them or show them something. Or, yeah.
Might they feel more comfortable if you cover them? Like out of sight, out of mind sort of thing?
I don't know whether, I mean, I know my son wouldn't want somebody to put anything over them, but I guess it depends, you know, kind of depends on the person. If there's a family member nearby, they probably would know better. Like, do you think they would be, you know?
But you
may not be a choice if they're in a car because we may be covered with something.
Because of glass and like everything else, yeah. No, I understand. And that's like when I said that if possible with giving space, like obviously I know, sometimes someone's bleeding or someone's in danger of their physical well-being, you can't always be conscious of every sensory thing.
So going back to Brian's point, if we had to cover for their safety, obviously that's going to throw them in an overload possibly. What do you do at that point with the overload? Do you just try to restrain them some so that they don't? What's the best? I guess what your opinion of the best?
I mean, before you do it, I'd still try to say it to show it. Like, I know you might not like this, but to keep you safe, we're going to have to cover you while we do this. To try that. But once the overload happens, yeah, you kind of, I'd say the best thing is just try to contain in that area the best you can. It's tough when there's a big overload.
Using that single point of contact that they're feeling comfortable with, and he gets a rescuer is able to be in the car with them under that blanket.
That'd be great, yeah, if somebody could say, I'm gonna come under with you, but it's to keep you safe.
From when I got here, now I'm gonna get under this cover with you because it's the safety place.
Yeah, that would be great if it was possible, because it's that trust person that can be established too.
Could they be swallowed? Like say maybe there isn't enough room for another person in the back of a car with the accident, however it happened. Could they be, wrapped in the towel and maybe swallowed, or is that?
If they're small enough, that might be a possibility. If it's not, somebody older, that would be harder to do that.
That are really cognizant when you do that, very easily restrict some
Right. But I mean, if it was just protecting the cover or something, just pull it out and maybe hold it instead of throwing it back off again.
I'll show you what these are pretty basic. You guys are kind of coming up with some really good ones. So, they introduce yourself, ask for their name. I think in this kind of scenario, nobody's going to think, maybe if they're running away, like they're in trouble or something. So talking to them by name might be helpful in that. Offer noise reducing headphones. So that's going to be one of the little sensory tools that I would say if you happen to have them in a squad or in a truck or something, you might come across this scenario, especially with something like a jaws of life and crunching noises and whatever else is going on. You can say, would you like to put these on? And they might know what those are if they use them in life anyway. And then to say it, to show it, hey, I'm going to have to use this big tool and it's going to help you get out of the car, but I'm going to have to start using it now and it's kind of loud,
Or you might need to use something like a helmet, a face shield rather than do a full blanket. So that even if it's grab somebody else's helmet and put that so that's there, rather than a full blanket so that they're not feeling.
That's a good idea. Like you have something down lower but not covering where the face.
Have you noticed as what we do with dispatch world is repetitive persistence? Say we're going and we keep repeating, keep calling their names, repeating what we're doing over and over and over until something clicks.
Yeah, I think that's. Did you interrupt you?
That's surprising. Would that work?
I think it would, as long as it's not too fast. Like in my mind, as long as there's a little bit of a time to process. Because like I said, sometimes they can process it, they just need this few extra seconds. So sometimes if it's coming too fast, I think it might be overload, but if there's just a little bit
of. I was wondering if it would be overload if you kept saying it over and over.
I think it'd be okay to repeat it if it wasn't, if it wasn't coming at them too quick.
With my learning disability, it takes me a couple seconds to understand what someone's saying. So, it's kind of, if you can, say it slow and then you repeat yourself, because with my brain, it takes me a couple seconds to identify what the question is until it finally clicks what the person's saying. So, slow and steady if possible. So.
You find your statements should be as brief as possible, as simple and brief as possible.
Yeah. Not overly detailed, especially in an emergency when everything's already heightened and then the warning before touching. So talking about the blankets to cover but I was even thinking okay, now the door's removed, do we need to, get them out? reach in, it's like, okay, all right, now we're ready to get you out. Now I'm gonna touch you because I'm gonna help you out of the car. Just given that, that front loading.
If they're an overly vocal, because it's an emergency, they're overly vocal, do you keep talking over them? Do you stop and listen to their talking? Or is it nonsense talking? I mean, do you just keep going?
I would venture to say that if it's the same phrase that they're saying over and over, or a sound that they're saying over and over, it's probably them trying to self-regulate an emergency. So you still should try to communicate and talk. You know what I mean? Like, now I'm gonna, now I'm going to do this, and just try to let them know. But if you hear them trying to say something different and they're just trying to get someone to listen to them, you know what I mean? They might just think that people aren't listening to them and they're trying to tell you something. So if it doesn't make sense to the situation, I guess, it might be more of a self-regulation thing. But, if they keep repeating something about mom over and over, they may be asking if mom's okay or mom's nearby. It's tough. It's tough to interpret in that emergency, whether it's if they're self-regulating, I guess, or whether it's asking for something or trying to convey something.
Is it good to kind of reply back to the same statement? Like if they're saying mom, whatever.
Something like, I hear what you're saying, or, I hear you, so that you're acknowledging them, I think is great. Right. Even if you don't know exactly what they're, trying to get attention for, say, I hear what you're saying, now I'm going to have to do this, or, you have to keep moving forward with what you need to do. I understand that in an emergency. I just wanted to throw some resources out there, like some of the things I mentioned tonight are on some of these websites. This is the Hussman Institute, and I'll send these links to like Lieutenant Perlotti, and then if anybody wants them, you can link. So this one has more information for first response. Like I even did it where I like printed it off and put them on a card. So if people wanted to sit on shift and had some downtime, they could look through them, learn something, something like that. So that's more for tips, to learn. And then these are kits that have visuals. So visuals in the world of autism are extremely important. Hearing things auditory isn't as strong typically as seeing it visually. So those visual supports, these are especially helpful if somebody is either nonverbal or maybe they're having a hard time communicating in that emergency situation. So I did mine on a keychain like that too. Like the I feel I need, they could point, I feel scared. You can give them those things where, there's even some just for, I really want water, just for those needs. Somebody's got to go to the restroom, that you might have some success giving those visual supports so they can communicate better with you. And then, there's another one too. Yeah, so I just put, you can print these out online and you can run them through a laminator. Like I just bought on Amazon these key rings, put them on there. They can tell you how old they are by pointing to a number. Things like that. It just, the other one was more for kind of like a prompt, I'm here to help, you're safe. I know you want, kind of help fill in the blank. So those are just some online resources that if you wanted to look into it more. These are pretty cheap tools that are available. I'd say Amazon's probably the cheapest. You can buy sets of those noise reducing headphones, the little koosh ball things, the popper keychains, sunglasses for real bright type situations. Then the others are just more like regulation, fidgets to the stretchy strings, spinners. Sometimes it doesn't hurt just to have little kits and response vehicles. You might, run across the scenario where it's helpful, especially the headphones, I would say too. And then, I don't know if you guys have heard of Wild Republic, but this company in Independence, Ohio, they're very generous donors. So if you call them, yeah?
It used to be here.
I know, that's right, it did, didn't it? Was it over on 82 or?
Yeah, I'm done.
Oh, okay. So yeah, it's in Independence now, but they if you called and said, hey, we're putting together some kits, for our vehicles or something, they would probably donate like the small plush stuffed animals, or they have like those bags of like the plastic, dinosaurs, things like that. They would probably, one time I was involved in an event in town. I was helping with the art festival. We asked for, I think it was like a whole huge box of like those little stuffed animals. So those are good ideas. And then visual schedules like dry erase boards, even just like the one with the marker, or you can get them like index cards. Even if you have something like that, a powerful thing is like the first then language. So, if you had somebody that got hurt on their bike or something, had to go to the hospital, and Dad said, I'm going to meet you guys at the hospital. Dad was called, said, I'll meet you there. So, you're trying to kind of convey, you got to go in the ambulance, you got to get to the hospital. Even just writing something in that moment when somebody's kind of hiding, you write, ride to hospital, see Dad. Just break it down. You could put bullet points next to it and you say, hey, first we're gonna ride to the hospital, then you can see Dad. Just that visual, like I said, is so different than just hearing it from somebody. Here we gotta do this, here we gotta get in the squad, here we gotta, it's just so different to see it written. So even just having these cheap dry erase boards that you can write something on might be really helpful. You probably find that in your work too, like a lot of visuals.
We have a couple clients that have they're nonverbal, but they have like iPads that they can communicate with. So we kind of like look through it and like we repeat, like, go home soon. Like we're like dismissals at 2 o'clock and it's like 1:50, like leaving home soon. So we try to communicate through their device because they understand that more. So we try to find ways that easy for them to communicate. So
do you? And I just thought of a question for you. Like, do you think if you had an adult that had their iPad with them and they were having an emergency, that they might, if somebody asked a question, they may be able to look that.
Yeah, if they have their iPad, they're pretty efficient and like very technological, like advanced with their iPad. So if they have an iPad, they can communicate through that instead of other situations. So refer to an iPad if possible.
Yeah. All right. So another resource, the National Autism Association, they have these free guides. I think you just have to put an email in and then they're like a downloadable that you can download, but it has like a whole toolkit for first responders. And then the Be Ready booklet addresses like autism and wandering, education, prevention, response for that. So I thought those were nice that they're free and available online. And then I just wanted to throw out there, Take Me Home. The Sherry Bevan Walsh was the first one that started it as the Summit County prosecutor, and then the gentleman that's there now is doing that initiative as well. They always send the schools these every year. I brought some with me if anybody wants to take, one when they go, but that's just a county database. So this is on families to register, so they have to initiate it. But what they can do is they can upload a picture. If it can be any disability, not just autism, but any kind of communication, or if somebody maybe is deaf, things like that. If they put their picture, their age, a little bit of info, address, so if that person can't communicate their address or their phone number or something, if they were to get misplaced from their family or get lost, they can put them in that county database to look up. I also heard there's people from Pepper Pike here, right, too? I heard you guys like have your own city one. Somebody told me that Pepper Pike has one now. Their own registry that families can volunteer. And I know City of Solon is looking into doing it right now as well, of making like a voluntary registry that families can do for the city. So that one's just something good to know, like just in case you encounter families in the community and just say, hey, hey, do you ever hear of this database? It's called Take Me Home program.
How is that accessed?
Online. They can either fill it out online or they can print off, and like I can leave some of the forms here. They can print off and mail it in too, and then like any of the, it has to be by law enforcement personnel. I don't know that fire can access it.
That's what I was getting at. Okay, so
I think it's law enforcement.
Access to it?
Yes, they have access to it. And they try to keep it updated as well.
So how does PD know to access it?
Like what's does the,
If the individual doesn't, can't tell you where they live or can't convey, they can check that database and see if that person is in there.
Blue glasses, or like closed haircuts, and those are like the closest.
Yeah, your son does wear blue glasses all the time. So that's one of them. This is another one I just found out about 6 months ago. It's called the LEADS program, and it was a collaboration with Mike DeWine and Opportunity for Ohioans with Disabilities. So this one is an Ohio database. So I think any state highway patrol or any, should be available on there. What you can do is just put in the basics, the individual who has a disability, like a communication challenge or barrier, and then you just put the license plates of your car. So it can either be if that person is the driver or somebody who frequently rides in that car with those license plates who has that communication disability or barrier. And then what they ask is that they have a physician sign it, that they're verifying that person has that challenge. But it's a pretty simple form. You can mail that in, and then that goes into a state registry. So that was something I just heard about not too long ago, and they kind of hide it online. It's a little bit hard to find, so I brought some with me, and I'll send you the links to these too if anybody wants to look at them. But just something to be aware of. I know you guys can't sign people up, but if you meet a family somewhere that might be interested in that. All right, this is the last couple of slides here. So I put, we're all uniquely human. If you've met one person with autism, you've met one person with autism. So just as you mentioned, everybody being different, everybody doesn't, they may have similar characteristics or kind of fall in that mild range or moderate or intensive, but everybody's unique, everybody's different. And then I just put, unless characteristics are obvious of family members nearby, or they happen to have a medical ID bracelet, how do you know who's autistic and who isn't? So, in the scenarios I gave, I'm saying we're assuming that we know from somebody that they have autism. You might not always know, right? So just doing our best to know that, everybody deserves empathy and understanding and have that open mind that we don't always know what's going on, or somebody may be feeling overloaded because of these kind of challenges.
Crazy question for me. Will they always know if they're injured?
Not necessarily, I guess. I've heard of individuals that could be in really extreme cold temperatures and not feel the cold because their body doesn't sense the cold in the same way. So they could be walking in the snow and not know that that is necessarily dangerous, and somebody has to remind them, hey, it's 30 degrees outside, that you have to wear a jacket when you go out. So sometimes I think, my experience that I've seen is as people get older, they kind of know how to work around that. If they have those sensory, smaller kids don't seem to sense the danger in things as much as those people seem to learn as they were. So.
Yeah, my group with adults, they're pretty in tune of the dangers. The one participant, we do fire drills and tornado drills once a month, and he's pretty aware of what to do in those scenarios. Tornado drills, we go in the bathroom, protect ourselves. Fire drills goes with the flow and go outside. So he's more in tune of the dangers and what to do. And in cold time, when he leaves, he puts his jacket on. So I think the older they get, the more they understand different things.
And I think that learning to work around those sensory challenges improves as people learn and get older too. I remember even seeing a presentation. I was at an OCaliCon conference, and I noticed when the girl was talking, she was on the spectrum, and she was talking about the temperatures and regulating, but she kept looking at the floor kind of in front of her. She wouldn't look out further. And she's like, well, the reason I'm looking down is the carpeting is just really busy out there. You know what I mean? And she knew, she's like, okay, because I'm trying to focus and I'm trying to present, I don't want to look at the way that carpet looks out there because it's throwing me off. So you kind of learn how to troubleshoot the challenges, I think. Like I said, that growth mindset, everybody can always kind of find their way to regulate themselves and work around it in a lot of different ways. So. I didn't really have much else. I had a question mark if people have questions.
As they get older, do they get more, or can they get more stubborn because they kind of know their routine, they want their routine?
In my experience, yeah. At the end of the day, if we have a client who's sitting out and makes a lot of noise, the one who has autism like would put his lunch away and go to his room. So I think it does depending on the person and the situation that they're in. So I think depending on the person too. So, but the person that had Harlem, he like would avoid and get a little stubborn at times. But yeah, depending.
And it's like tough too, because like, I mean, even in like school settings where he's talking about, we want to foster independence. We want people to become more independent. We want them to take ownership of their lives and their plans and everything. So you want people to develop that independence, but even as parents, we still have that notion of wanting to be protective and wanting to keep them from, you know, things too. So it's that balance between, you know, providing that support and having somebody try to become more independent on their own too. So. But yeah, definitely ages and stages, like some stubbornness in the teenagers more, things like that can happen, yeah.
So how would you recommend coaching them? Did you need them
I think the offering choices if you can, even if it's something simple, like kind of making them feel empowered, like they have some kind of a say in something. Or like I said, like if they like electronics, they might be really interested in something that you have, like that you can show them, you know, some kind of gear or some kind of radio or flashlight or something. But I know it can be tough in emergencies because you can't always plan for how to handle it when things have to happen fast.
Just going back to the take me home real quick. So we put whoever's in that affects our city and reminder room, we put that into our CAD system. We have recently found that there's a lot of old records in there that the families do not go up and go in and update, nor do they tell us what they move. It's too bad that there isn't some kind of a thing that keeps you as the person who entered that record, hey, you know, it's been a year, and has anything changed, you know? Because there's things that are in there that are, you know, people are adults now, and they're not children anymore.
No, I would agree with that, because like I've even filled out the Take Me Home program when my son was younger. Now he's old enough now, he can tell you his name, his address, his parents' names, everything, you know, it's fine. But when he was younger, I, you know, had it in there. And then every year, like at the schools, we get that information sent in, we distribute it out to families, but I don't think every family's filling it out every year because they're like, oh, I just did that like a year or two ago, and the picture hasn't changed much. But then, like you said, what happens when it's 6, 7 years? So like nobody reached back out to me and said, hey, do you want to update your information? So if families don't keep doing it or getting a reminder that.
Something that maybe, I don't know who's responsible for that database maintenance, but I mean, you added it, you should be responsible for it.
Yeah.
And letting them know, I mean, it's there to help you. And unfortunately, people are just busy.
Right. Even if they gave families a link that said, can you come in to here and update your information, it'd be so much easier than like doing a whole new form over again or something. Yeah. No, that's a great point. I should tell there is a contact that reaches out to us, like the paramedics from the prosecutor's office, and I should tell her that.
Yeah. Actually, just like, you know, because, you know, this person.
Yeah, they're like 15 now, this is when they were 3 or something, yeah. No, that's a great point. Anything else? So, I think that's my contact information. If you think of anything else I can do to help you guys.
You're going to send these?
Yeah, I can send, and I have the links to those extra things, those extra websites and things like that I can send you in an email as well. But yeah, you guys asked really good questions, like things that I hadn't even thought of too. So,
well, is it really rude to just ask somebody if they're autistic? Because like for my job, like you just ask somebody, are you suicidal? Are you this? Like, could that set somebody off? Potentially, just ask them that.
I know. So I think it depends on the individual. Like I know, you know, even in the verbiage, it's changed over to, you know, some people prefer to say autistic. Some people don't like that language, like individuals that have it or the parents don't like that because that sounds like that is defining who they are as a person instead of saying a person with autism. Like there's a lot of kind of touchiness on how people prefer it sometimes. I know, like, I have a friend who has a daughter that doesn't like to acknowledge that she has any disability, and sometimes it can be offensive if people say something that, so I think it is important, just in general. I mean, I know as a parent, like, I try to find ways to teach my son that he has to recognize that he has challenges there and what autism is, and I try to have that conversation. I don't know how comfortable every family or how much they, you know what I mean, do that. So I don't know whether, like, I don't know, the individuals that you have that are older, do they talk about having a disability or not necessarily?
Not necessarily. I think they're pretty aware of their disabilities, the one that can comprehend, so.
But yeah, I think even maybe focusing more on the, do you feel, or do you, are you feeling, overwhelmed? Are you feeling, like, I think those might be more productive than, yeah.
So I teach in university. I'll get a report from the program that says I have kids in my class that have IEPs, and I'll know who they are, the rest of the students. So because of HIPAA and FERPA, I have to be very cognizant of how I ask certain things and how I do it. So there's a lot of times that I teach theater, so I'm working with power tools and big heavy things and things that clang and bang and flash and make noise. So there's a lot of times where in the beginning of class, I know which ones are, but I'll ask it as the broad question of, okay, who here is bothered by bright lights? Who here is bothered by this? Okay, I have tinted work glasses over there, and I have ear protection over here. If you don't feel comfortable using any of the gear, and you want to go out of the room while we're doing it, that is perfectly fine. If not, we can work on it. And so I have to ask it in that way so that I don't single the kid out.
Yeah, that's very good.
But then I also normalize it for them to go
To
over
go
it.
get something that they need, yeah. Awesome. Anything else? All right. I think that's it. That's all I have.
If there's nothing further, thank you guys for coming out. We appreciate